Hey there, geeks and geekettes. It is the Bearded Geeks 31 on the 31st. Yeah. Okay, so 31 on the 31st was, I think it was originally started by a big YouTuber called Cody Leach, and it's basically between the big three horror movie or slasher franchises, that being A Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween and Friday the 13th. There are a total of 31 movies, that is including the new Halloween. Let's go. So what a better time to do this video than on the 31st of October, which is of course the spookiest day of the year, Halloween. I love horror movies. I love comic book movies, but horror movies, when I grew up, horror movies were sort of forbidden for a child. I was brought up in a stricter upbringing, and my parents will tell you I was a rather sensitive child. I've got an uncle that's not a huge amount older than me, who decided that when I was 4 or 5 years old that Freddy Krueger and the original Nightmare on Elm Street movie wasn't that bad a thing to watch. Well, it fucking traumatised me. I was absolutely terrified of Robert Englund and Freddy Krueger. Forbidden Planet, when I was a kid in Cardiff, in the upstairs window had a Freddy Krueger cardboard cutout, and as much of a geek as I was, I would not go in Forbidden Planet because Freddy Krueger was in that window. So it scared me for a long time, and that's what horror films are designed to do, is scare you. And as I got a little bit older, I realised even though I still couldn't watch Freddy Krueger, I loved the Halloween films, I loved the Friday the 13th films, and then obviously got into other movies through it. So there are some really bad movies on this list, really bad, but there are some horror classics on this list as well, so I'm not going to spend too much time on what I perceive to be the bad movies on this list. Nobody's going to have the exact same list as me, and that's fine. Everyone's got an opinion, so let's just get into it. Number 31, Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. Absolute stinker of a movie. Freddy has been turned into a cartoon caricature of himself. Very little resemblance to the horror icon where I grew up. I mean, Freddy starts the movie riding a broomstick and cackling. Garbage. Absolute clusterfuck of a film, and it destroyed the franchise nearly. Number 30, and I did struggle between this and number 29 about which one was worse, but it is Friday the 13th, Jason Takes Manhattan. It's been said a million times, but this film should have been called Jason Takes a Boat. Literally, there's only one good kill in the movie, and that is the boxer when Jason punches his head off. This film's a slog to watch. Jason looks crap, and then there's toxic waste that turns him into a child or some bullshit. Why Crystal Lake suddenly has a cruise liner being able to dock there, just absolute garbage and boring. Number 29, the film that really pissed me off, Halloween Resurrection. The movie that shit all over the great ending of Halloween H2O. The movie that shit on Jamie Lee Curtis's character of Laurie Strode, the ultimate final girl. And Busta Rhymes' Kung Fu, the found footage, just an awful film that jumped on every cliche of the 2000s horror sort of trends. Awful acting, awful shit film. Not a fan at all. Those are all just really bad movies. Number 28, A Nightmare on Elm Street, the remake. I got excited about this movie when it was announced because of Jackie Earle Haley portraying Freddy Krueger, because I think the guy could pull off sinister and horrifying, etc. And they made Freddy a nonce. Other films it's alluded to, and that is far more scary than saying he's a nonce. Clearly whoever wrote this movie had no clue about the character, the franchise, or the fans. Freddy's scary enough without being a paedophile. He kills you in your sleep. He is going after the children of the adults that killed him for being a child murderer. That's scary enough without turning him into a fucking paedophile. No. The CGI looked bad. Everything in this movie just looked worse than the movie from the 80s. Just, no. And it's a shame because Jackie Earle Haley, I think, could have been a really good Freddy Krueger if given the right script and some decent effects, because the effects in this movie just don't look as good as the 80s. Okay, number 27, Jason X. Now this movie I can actually watch and laugh at. I'm not sure if that was their intention. It must have been, because it's so shit. But it's so shit, it's almost enjoyable. Basically, they put Jason in the future, in space, and then they give him futuristic upgrades. I mean, why? The guy was an unstoppable killing machine, and they make Uber Jason. But like I said, this movie is that bad that it falls into the watchable for all the wrong reasons. But there are two decent kills. One is involving nitrogen, and the other is the sleeping bag kill that's been done in two other movies. But comedy gold in this. The film looks awful. It looks like a shit TV movie. Number 26, Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers. This should have been called Halloween, the Movie Studio Ruin a Franchise. There was so much behind the camera action and behind the camera drama, they forgot to put anything on screen. They bring back the character of Tommy Doyle, which sounds good. Paul Rudd, aka Ant-Man, plays him, which sounds good. But goddamn, Paul Rudd, he looked so lost all the way through this film. It was one of the worst casting decisions I've ever seen in a horror movie. And the guy who can act, just not in this movie. There's two different versions. There's the studio version, the director's version, and they're both crap. Really shit. Far more watchable than Jason X, though, or any of the other movies above this. Number 25, Friday the 13th, The New Blood. This has also been said a million times, but it's Jason versus Carrie. I don't have any fun with this movie. Jason versus Carrie is probably giving this movie too much credit. There's some girl with psychic powers somehow brings Jason back from the dead. Bullshit. I've only ever watched this movie once. I've tried to watch it again for these reviews and I turned it off. It's just fucking awful. It's convoluted. It takes itself far too seriously. Maybe the deaths could have been good if the AMPA hadn't got involved and basically the camera cut away at any good points. Just not what the Friday the 13th franchise was about for me. Apparently this movie has its good moments. I just can't remember any of them. Number 24, Friday the 13th, A New Beginning. This was the Scooby-Doo Friday the 13th. The entire thing builds towards an ending where you have to guess who the killer is, sort of. And when it's revealed, it's not a moment of, oh shit, it's a moment of, what the fuck? Where did that come from? It's not, there's nothing in this movie you can piece together, much like the original Friday, sorry to say. There's nothing in the movie to tell you who the killer is. It's a Jason-less Jason film, because at this point Jason is the killer. But I do kind of like this movie. There are some good kills. There is a good mix of the sort of comedy horror and the sexual sort of stuff that is more pronounced in the Friday the 13th movies. Friday the 13th was the tits franchise because there's tits in nearly every movie. Unfortunately, this movie was the one that marked the beginning of the downfall of the Friday movies and the gimmicks. And there's that guy serenading somebody from the shitter. Why the fuck did they put that in the movie? Number 23, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, The Dream Child. This is where the Nightmare on Elm Street series took a serious turn for the worse. And began insulting the audience intelligence. Alice returns, which was a good character. However, the script sucks. It's so badly written and the outcome is so disjointed that they ruined what could have been a cool premise. Alice discovers that Freddy is getting to her through her baby and through her baby's dreams, or unborn baby in the beginning. Odd. I can suspend my disbelief, but when a film looks like it was made on the fly like this was, I can't get into it. There's a huge amount of the Dream Child is dedicated to Freddy Krueger's backstory about his conception. And as you probably know, his mother was raped by 100 maniacs. And basically we see Freddy attempting to possess Alice's unborn son for fucking reasons. Plenty of potential involving a possessed unborn child, but none of it is pulled off in this movie. But the movie does have some engaging kill scenes. There's the character Greta, her force-fed to death scream is probably a standout moment and one the fans will remember. It's not scary, but it's gross. So the Dream Child wanted Freddy to be both scarier and funnier, and for me, it failed at both. And we're still not into the good films yet. These are all bad movies in my opinion. So number 22, Jason Goes to Hell. The third Jason-less movie. Well, he does feature in little bits. The opening to this movie is actually really good, and it feels new and it looks new, and it could have been a kickstart to the Friday the 13th that the franchise needed, and after that it's all downhill. The acting is worse than usual in this movie, even for the Friday franchise, which for me is the weaker of the three franchises. Soundtrack is fucking horrendous and hard to listen to. There's a batshit crazy backstory going on, which is so random that it's alien to the rest of the franchise. There's fucking daggers and family heirlooms, and no, why? This movie almost feels like a David Cronenberg style possession movie, but it's a failed experiment. The only memorable part of this movie for me is Freddy Krueger's glove coming out at the end and grabbing Jason's mask, which got us all to think of Freddy versus Jason, hell yeah, and then it took 12 years to come out. So yeah, I never understood this film, and I never want to, and it's the third Jason-less movie. Just stop making Friday movies without Jason in it. It doesn't work. Okay, number 21, Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. Now I know most people say this movie is horrible, but it's not. It's just disappointing. Number 4 ended so well with a brutal cliffhanger that this next installment was written, and then they released the shit all over it. For some reason they turned Jamie into a mute. For some reason the character of Tina was introduced because they killed Rachel. Tina is the most annoying character ever put to screen, bar none. And it's not just the way she's written, because I've seen interviews with the actress and she's annoying as fuck. She is the most obnoxious, irritating final girl in any of these movies. I would take bland over that annoying quite easily, and she's not annoying so you can cheer when she gets killed. She's just plain annoying. Obviously they turned Jamie into a mute, which was a big mistake, unless they were going to follow on from exactly what happened in Halloween 4. For some reason she's inexplicably psychically linked to Jason. Jason? That'd be fucking weird. Inexplicably she is psychically linked to Michael, which doesn't make much sense, and that just feels tacked on and almost like to hide what happened, or to hide the fact that they shit out of the ending of 4 and what could have been a brilliant addition to the franchise in 5. There aren't many real scares in this movie, and there's some baffling cartoon sound effects when it involves the two bungling coppers. You could have kept those characters in, but having the Hanna-Barbera style cartoon stuff, sound effects in the background of these coppers just really takes me out of the movie, because the story isn't too bad, all things considered. If you watch 4 and 5 back to back, this is dog shit. If you watch it a year later and you've had time to forget, then yeah, this is an alright movie, but I do still quite like it. And there is a tacked on cliffhanger ending with a man in black, and that, when you consider the next movie does, just feels like one of them to the audience of the franchise. That's the end of the bad movies where I'm just going to slate them. Yeah, Halloween 5, I don't like it. I'm trying to find merit in it and I can't. The rest of these movies I can enjoy, and I will rewatch most of the movies before this point. I'll never watch again, I doubt. because I'll never have to do this list again either. Number 20, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. And before anybody starts, I don't care if Michael Myers isn't in this movie. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch is a good horror movie if you take it away from the Michael Myers franchise. And lately this movie has attained sort of a cult status, and I'm glad, because this movie is fucking scary. Not so much in what you're looking at, but what this Silver Shamrock company are doing. They're killing kids via Halloween masks and a TV programme. There's some deeper meanings behind it. A lot more people like it now than when it first came out. Obviously when I was a kid, when this movie came out, I was like, this is garbage, where's Michael Myers? Oh, kids' heads just exploded. Consider me sold. Now, if Halloween 1 had come out, and then this had come out as Halloween 2, and we were always told that it was going to be a different story every year, I think this movie would have done a lot better than it did. The fact that they did 2 Michael Myers Halloweens and then Season of the Witch pissed everyone off. But hindsight's great, because I'm aware that this movie is far more appreciated now than it was. So if every Halloween story had been a different story, I imagine that this would have been much higher up my list for me. It's only this far down the list because it is a Michael Myers-less Halloween movie. And unfortunately it doesn't fit with the big 3, yet it is far better than any of the movies I've placed below it. So the Silver Shamrock idea was absolutely fucking horrifying, but it was a great idea. Tom Atkins' performance in this movie is really good. It's almost as good as his 70s porn stash. The end is a bit messy and out there, but it's still an enjoyable film nonetheless. Number 19, Friday the 13th, Part 3, 3D. I enjoy this movie, but fuck, this movie takes a while to get going. It does drag for a bit. The bikers are pointless and unlikable, and I know they're supposed to be unlikable, but they are just cannon fodder for Jason. In saying that, I want Jason to kill. I want him to hack and slash assholes. This is the movie where Jason got the iconic hockey mask. It's quite crazy that Jason Voorhees is known as the hockey mask machete wielding guy that didn't wear a hockey mask until Part 3. Part 2 he wore a sack. Part 1, well, we'll get to that in a bit. There's a character in this that keeps jumping out on people and scaring people. Big crazy curly hair. I'm glad he died. Fucking annoying character, but he's not a Tina level of annoying. The 3D stuff, when you watch now, doesn't look good. You know, every 5 minutes there's something fucking popping out of you, arrowheads, yo-yos, and it looks really crap now. I think it looked crap back in the day. The 3D technology wasn't very good. Okay, number 18. A Nightmare on Elm Street, The Dream Master. This is part 4. It is enjoyable, but it's the start of campy Freddy and comedy Freddy. In fact, Freddy's almost too camp in this. He's still a villain. He's not the caricature of himself that he later became. Alice, despite the next movie letting her down, is a great final girl in this movie. She starts off feeble and weak and becomes empowered, and by the end of the movie she's an empowered woman instead of a scared little girl. Something that Hollywood suddenly thinks is a good idea. Well, Freddy Krueger was doing this shit in the 80s. There's great kills that are dialed up to 11, but unfortunately 11 is just a bit loud for this franchise. The bug death that everyone loves is just gross. I'm not a fan. The movie is like somebody tried to make Freddy a summer blockbuster, and that summer blockbuster vibe and this doesn't really mesh that well. But this is a crazy looking film. It's like, I think the director was like a porn director or something before, and he was let loose for this movie and it shows. 17, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. Yeah, this movie broke the top 20 for me. A lot of people absolutely hate this movie, and I don't care. It's my list. People claim that this movie is too much of a departure for the franchise, and I'm like, really? The first movie, Freddy Krueger tried to kill a group of kids in their dreams, and while he killed most of them, he was beaten by a teenage girl. He failed. So in this movie, he tries a different approach and he tries to possess a kid, a teenager. So you take away the silliness of Jesse with the dancing in his bedroom. Take that away and you take in that this male final guy is really a girl. He screams like a girl. But I like the film. I still think this is a solid entry. I mean, the final girl is a man for a start. Yes, there's all of the gay overtones and the towels, whoosh, death scene, literal balls. There's a lot of little things in this movie that apparently weren't done on purpose. Bullshit. To me, that there's far much better in this movie that outweighs the bad. The pool party scene where Freddy comes into the real world and goes on a rampage is fucking brilliant. As is Freddy when he finally possesses Jesse and breaks out of his skin. That is horrific to watch even now. The kill after it, yeah. I really enjoy this movie. And there's a lot of gore and weirdness in this movie that still holds a creep factor despite some of the camper elements. The school bus scene is fucking terrifying. I mean, you imagine you're going on a bus to school with your friends and the driver just decides, I'm taking you to school. I'm taking you in the middle of nowhere and I'm going to cut you up with these knives on my fingers. Yeah, it's not the comedy film that people say it is. This film is dark. So the towel whips, the killer budgie and the S&M club aside, really, really enjoyable movie. Number 16, I'm going to catch some heat for this. Friday the 13th, the original movie. Bye-bye. This will probably piss people off, but I like this movie, but it looks like ass. This is a cheap made film. Some people will say it works in his favour. I don't think it does. I still think it looks like ass. I'm not sure how old I was when I first watched this, but I was aware of Jason with a hockey mask and a machete. I mean, this film is older than me. And the first kill in this movie seemed a bit odd. It's the girl on the side of the road that hitches a ride. Why would you hitch a ride with Jason? Because I assumed that the killer in this movie would be the big guy with the machete and a hockey mask. And it's not. So that kill seems at odds with what I think of as Jason. But then the rest of the movie, all of the kills, the reactions are that there is a big guy with a machete coming after him. The scare and fear in people's faces and the way people are killed would suggest there is a 6 foot something, strong as an ox bloke murdering teenagers. And I said it in another video I've done recently. It comes totally out of left field that it's Pamela Voorhees, the killer. There's nothing to hint that it was her. There is nothing to suggest that the movie writers knew it would be her. It feels tacked on and a twist for the sake of a twist. And this is the exact same thing that A New Beginning replicated years later. It is a good watch. The final girl is a good final girl. Kevin Bacon is in it. The final jump scare is a really good jump scare. I'm not a fan of jump scares for no reason. This one works. In fact, I remember the first time I watched this movie, that jump scare got me. I think the first Friday film I watched was probably part 4, which would explain my rankings. I'm fully aware that this movie paved the way for other slashers. You know, that is it's not that great. Or not that great compared to other movies in this franchise and the other two. So number 15, Friday the 13th, part 2. Our first real introduction to Jason. He's not a zombie, he's just a large deformed man with a sack on his head. And the sack actually worked. It looked scary with the one eye. I don't know how they made that work, but they did. And this movie feels better than the first movie. It looks better. It's not as trashy and cheap looking. Jason's mother's head being in a shrine that he's built for her was an awesome sort of addition to it. And this movie basically continues directly from the end of the original Friday the 13th and then jumps 5 years into the future. And that works. And it's back at Camp Crystal Lake. It's a good, fun movie for me and it beats its predecessor. And there's that wheelchair kill too. Fucking brutal. Okay, number 14, Halloween by Rob Zombie. This is the remake to John Carpenter's original. Everyone else is going to be fucking jumping up and down that this should have been far lower down the list because it's dog shit. I like it. Simple as. I like the movie. I like the fact it's not a step-for-step retread of the original, because that would have been pointless, Nightmare on Elm Street. Instead of the sheep being the sheep for no reason, it's a young man's family that broke him. It's his home life that broke him. It's being bullied at school that broke him, that turned him into this absolute wrecking machine. Watching him become more and more the sheep and not Myers, I think was the right choice for this movie to set it apart from John Carpenter's movie. There's a lot of Rob Zombie dialogue in the first third of the movie, and it does get a bit much. There is a lot of swearing. I swear a lot, but this takes the piss. And it is a little distracting. The first time I watched it, it didn't bother me at all, and that's how rednecks behave. This was a redneck family. But once you get past the language and the dialogue, this is a good, steady movie. And Michael Myers is massive. Tyler Mane, the guy that plays Michael Myers in this, is huge. He's an ex-professional wrestler. He played Sabretooth in the X-Men films, or a X-Men film. That makes Michael Myers more plausible. The feats of strength he pulls off and the stuff he does is more believable when the guy is a 6'5" powerhouse. I can believe it. So, yeah. Number 13 is Friday the 13th, Jason Lives. This movie is fun, I'll give you that. Its blend of comedy and horror work perfect for this franchise. Slasher elitists will hate it for the same reason that I like it, but this gets that balance right for me. It's quite difficult for me to watch this movie and say I wasn't entertained. The paintball commando kill is outstanding. It is hilarious, and it's got a dark humour to it, but it opens up the world of Crystal Lake, and it just feels like a bigger chapter than the rest, or than the movies that came before it. I can rewatch it multiple times. It's part of the Tommy Jarvis trilogy, which has obviously started in part 4, and it follows on from part 5. But this is almost a direct sequel to part 4. Yeah, it confuses me too. This also marks the starting point of the supernatural Jason or zombie Jason. It ups the ante in this movie as well. There's car fights, there's car fights? There's gunfights, car chases. It's a good go-to, take your brain out of gear horror movie. It's a blast. I like it. I don't just remember this movie for 1 or 2 decent kills like the rest of the franchise. Really pissed you off now, haven't I? Number 12 is Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. You're already pissed off, but hear me out. This film is disgusting. When all of the other horror films being made at this time were all polished, teen, you know, everyone was good looking, everything looked nice and crisp. You know, they were cool kills, but everything was too clean and cut. Horror took a bit of a dive around this time. And then this movie came out, shot on 16mm to give you that creep factor. It's dark, brooding. It's not quite as full-on redneck as the original remake. There's less of that redneck hick speak on the most part. Laurie Strode in this is far more likeable than the first time round, because first time round I wanted Michael to stab her in the face. Brad Dourif from The Child's Play, you know, the voice of Chucky, he turns in a memorable performance in this as the sheriff. He is in the first one, but he gets more to do in the second one. And Tyler Mane's Michael Myers is on form. He is an absolute machine in this movie, wrecking his way through Haddonfield. And delves further into Michael's damaged psyche, which again is what I liked about the original remake to the original. There's a lot of originals being said there. But this is why I like it. It's not a retread. It's got nods to Halloween 2. But this isn't a remake of Halloween 2. This is a sequel to the Halloween remake. It's brutal. There are issues. The white horse thing. Rob Zombie's obsession with white horses is, I don't personally get it. I also don't understand why he has to put Sherry Moon Zombie in every film he does, because she is a shit actress. She was okay in the first Halloween. She was brilliant in Devil's Rejects. In this, she's fucking not up to much. He just has to put his wife in every movie, and I don't know why. I don't think she's a good actress at all. But this movie is a bloody, bloodthirsty, nasty ride. Dr. Loomis gets right up my ass in this movie. He has a personality transplant that I really didn't like. But again, they didn't try to recreate Donald Pleasant's Dr. Loomis. I learned the other day that when Malcolm McDowell signed on to play Dr. Loomis, he'd never seen the Halloween films, which is why his take on Loomis is so jarring. It's because he'd never seen the character in anything before. The other big mistake in this was having Michael Myers speak towards the end, and when he does speak, it's die. Nope, shouldn't have done it. Should have left him a mute. And if the theatrical release isn't bad enough and brutal enough for you, there is a director's cut that should proper gross you out. I like the director's cut. Okay, number 11, Halloween 2, the original sequel. I originally put this below Rob Zombie's sequel, but the last quarter of this movie is a win for me. And there are some great kills throughout this movie, which makes this place higher than original. Biggest issue of this movie, we need to get out of the way first, and that is Jamie Lee Curtis sleeping through 3/4 of this film. Why the fuck would you have such a good actress in this movie and have her in a coma? Rendering such a great, iconic character useless for a large chunk of the movie. Also jarring because of the really bad wig she's wearing. In between the original Halloween and this, she cut her hair, so they had to put her in a wig. And this movie continues on the same night in the chronological order of the movies. You can tell some time has passed, but as long as you don't watch them back to back, then it doesn't make that much of a difference. You watch them back to back and it's really jarring, the changes in Jamie Lee Curtis. And the guy that plays Michael Myers is a bit of an issue in this for me. He's no Nick Castle. This guy is more Terminator. He's very robotic looking at times. And the mask looks weird on him because it's the same mask as the original movie, but this guy is bigger and is stretched and it just doesn't quite look right. With it being the direct sequel to the original, it's just very jarring, her hair and then this mask suddenly changing shape when it's taking place on the same night. But really good, solid entry into the franchise. Myers gets more inventive ways to kill, clearly because they had a bigger budget this time around. Loomis is great in this movie. Donald Pleasance, he shines in this movie. It does feel like a direct continuation as long as you don't watch them the same day back to back. The hospital setting for me works really well and it ups the ante because obviously there's more people to kill. It is a very quiet hospital though. And the last part of this film is awesome. I still kind of like the fact that it turned out that Michael Myers and Laurie Strode were brother and sister. I know it wasn't hinted to in the first one, and I've complained about that in other movies, but it added a bit of depth, even though he was shoehorned in. But it gave for some cool sequels. Top 10 time, and if some of my other rankings didn't piss you off, this definitely will. Number 10, Freddy vs. Jason. Some people hate this movie. A lot of people are disappointed with this movie. I love it. It does everything it says on the tin. You take two dead serial killers and you pit them against each other. At this point, both franchises had been fucking ruined by shit scripts and directors, and they almost took it back to basics here. They had a very dark Freddy with some of the comedy elements, and they had a really cool zombie Jason. There is a line in this film that I've written. I was originally leaving in my review, and I don't even want to say it. It's out of order and it's got no place in modern day films. But in that line's defense, it comes out of Freddy Krueger's mouth. And Freddy Krueger is a disgusting person. You know, if he's a child murderer and a child killer, then chances are he would be racist as well. Basically, the brutal, deformed, rather stupid serial killer fights against a burnt child murderer and Dream Master. And if you consider how bad this movie could have been, judging by the movies leading up to it, you could appreciate this like I do. It's an enjoyable movie for me. There's comedy that lands, the kills are fucking awesome. It plays like a best of for both characters. It's almost like the director has made the best unplayable video game ever, and I like it. I don't understand how you couldn't like it, really. I mean, at one point Jason rips Freddy's arm off and stabs Freddy with his own arm. The film looks cool. It does seem to pick some highlights of the characters' backstories and highlights of their kills and put them all into this thing, and it's quite an adrenaline-fueled hour and a half. This is a fun movie to watch, and I really enjoy it. Robert Englund shines as Freddy in this. If this is the last time we ever see Robert Englund playing Freddy Krueger, then I'm glad it was this and not The Final Nightmare or Part 5, Part 4. This is the Freddy. I'm, you know, one and done would have been cool, but I'm happy to see this. If this is the last iteration of Robert Englund's Freddy Krueger we get. The other characters in the film are okay. There's nothing special, nothing to write home about, but you don't need anything special or anything to write home about because you've got Freddy and Jason doing battle in a movie. So there, number 10. Number 9, Halloween 2018. Now, this time last year, this movie would have been far higher up my list. I think I originally placed it third because I'd made this video last year. I wasn't happy with it. So the first watch after so many bad horror movies, not just Halloween movies, but horror movies in general, this hit all the right spots for me. It was a blast. Courtney, what's his name? Something Courtney? Jai Courtney? No. I can't remember the actor's name that played Michael. Something Courtney or Courtney something. He's a perfect fit for the Nick Castle style. Michael Myers, he's not robotic. He moves like Nick Castle used to. Nick Castle does actually play the shape in a scene, I think, and it's a blink and a miss it moment. I really, really enjoy this movie. Number 6, Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. Right, I'll just get this out of the way. The mask is crap, but that's all that's wrong with this film, really. But it's Michael Myers. He's not on a catwalk. He's not a fashion star. He's just grabbed a mask and put it on. And let's just leave it at that. He's on a killing spree. So there it is at certain points in this movie. And one point it is really noticeable. They used the wrong mask where he had pink skin and blonde hair. How the hell that ever got in this film, I don't know. But it got in there. And it is quite laughable that that managed to get in, but they were just pumping sequels out at this point. But mask aside, this movie is everything a Halloween movie needed. The movie looks creepier than the original movie, I'd say. Despite it being shot in Utah in spring, they made this look like Haddonfield in October, which wasn't really in Haddonfield in October. It was in the summer in LA originally. There is a very creepy atmosphere to this film. 11-year-old Scream Queen Danielle Harris's first role, and she's introduced as Michael Myers' niece, the daughter of Laurie Strode. And for such a young actress, she is incredible in this film, and it's a shame that the sequel pissed all over it. And it shows because Halloween fans love Danielle Harris to the point where she's in the Rob Zombie remake, even though she hated it. But she loves the Halloween franchise as much as it loves her. So the casting is great. This is my second favourite version of Michael Myers. Dr. Loomis hasn't gone full-blown touchy-feely creep yet. Have a look at the next movie, Donald Pleasance, No Personal Space. He gets really fucking weird. He's in fine form. There's a great story, there's great characters, there's great set pieces. This is more than a worthy second place for the Halloween franchise for me. Watch it again and tell me that that ending isn't brilliant. Not just the chase across the roof, but the actual very end of this movie. Tell me that that isn't a brilliant ending. Just a shame. The other movies that came, because this macabre image and the realisation on Loomis's face when he sees what she has become could have made a follow-up brilliant, and they fucked it. Top 5, and you're still thinking he hasn't really put a remake in the top 5, has he? Yeah, he has. Get your keyboards ready. 5th place, Friday the 13th, the final chapter. You thought I was going to see the remake. I love this movie. It's got comedy, but not too much. It's not quite Jason Lives levels of comedy, but there's a little bit there. This movie is far more slasher than some of the movies on this list. The kills are outright brilliant and range from butchering to evisceration, and I love it. It's the most balanced of the original movies. It features Corey Feldman as my favourite version of Tommy Jarvis. Obviously a character that has his own little trilogy within these movies. He's a really odd kid in this, and it works. And the ending of this movie and his showdown with Jason Voorhees is disturbing and horrifying all on its own. And again, a later movie shit all over it. It's unsettling and quite horrifying in all the best ways. It's another Halloween 4 type thing where the sequel lets a really good ending down. The cast in this are great, which is rare for a Friday the 13th movie. And there are some likeable characters in this that get killed off. And that makes it all the more uncomfortable yet enjoyable to watch. And then there's Crispin Glover's dance moves. Awesome. Number 4, Friday the 13th, 2009, the remake. Now, I've already said that I like this movie, and before you hit the dislike button and call me an asshole, just remember this is my list, and we're allowed to have different opinions. You can have a different opinion, that's fine. For me, this movie picks everything what works in the Friday the 13th franchises, all of the movies, and puts them all into one nice, neat little bow, and I'm a fan. It dumps all the crap, it trims the fat, and because of that, this is my favourite Friday the 13th horror movie. Unlucky. The movie looks better than any of the other Friday movies. It looks better than a lot of other movies on this list, including bigger, better films. Doesn't get bogged down in the lore and explaining who Jason is and why Jason is, and it does all that in 10 minutes because it didn't need to. It doesn't try to reinvent the wheel because it didn't need to. The first 10 minutes of this movie basically remake the first 3 movies, and it does it better than those 3 movies. Sorry. This movie is faster, it's got more action, it's got the cast is exactly what's needed. There's people that are relatable, there's people that you fucking hate, and you're supposed to. So when everyone's going to start banging on about that douchebag, yeah, he was there for you to hate. The writers did the right thing with him. Jared Padalecki from Supernatural is in this movie, and he plays a great part. He plays a likeable hero with a decent story, and he's almost really this reboot's version of Tommy Jarvis. He's the protector of people. I've done another video on this. Go and check that out. It's called In Defense of Friday the 13th, 2009. This movie made a ludicrous character believable, and if you don't like it, then don't watch it. I think it was a really good character. It was brutal. It was funny in places where comedy could have been used. Is it imaginative? No. But the last imaginative Jason movie, he was in space. Take it or leave it. Top 3 time, and this is probably the least divisive part, because a lot of people put these 3 in their top 3. They're interchangeable for a lot of people. Number 3 for me is A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors. So clearly I prefer the original, but whether that comes first or second, you'll find out. I've always preferred the original, and I always will. I know a lot of people prefer Part 3. I don't. This is a fun movie. The imagination of the kills in this movie are outstanding. Freddy's got more imagination in his kills. He's got some one-liners, but he hasn't strayed into that this is camp and fucking stupid territory. He's a long way off that, but it is the start of it. This movie takes place in a psychiatric hospital because the kids are all in basically a psychiatric hospital because somebody's trying to kill them in their sleep and nobody believes them. And it works. They're in a place to try and treat them for these night terrors and it's great. Original, and some of the original cast return. Nancy returns to help these kids fight back against Freddy, and they do fight back. Dream Warriors for me is faithful in tone and logic to the original, while also expanding the universe much in the way that the sequel did. It ups the action for when the kids fight back via lucid dreaming, trained by Nancy, and it makes the movie fun instead of hopeless and bleak. Even though you know the kids are in a world of trouble, there's a little bit of silliness, but it's the right side of silly for Freddy. This movie is responsible for Freddy's best one-liner, "Welcome to primetime, bitch." So, as well as Nancy, you've got Patricia Arquette as Kristen, another character that was ruined in a sequel. It also successfully undoes some of the damage that the original Nightmare on Elm Street's ending did, because that ending wasn't good. The very end. But more on that a bit later. The characters in this Nightmare are more likeable than the other Nightmare movies. The deaths are personal to the characters, which I liked. You know, there's a junkie or a recovering junkie in this movie, and Freddy kills her with syringe fingers. And in terms of horror, there's nothing much more horrifying for a recovering drug addict than needles going into your skin when you're trying to clean yourself up. So the deaths are personal and form-fitting for these characters. In terms of horror sequels, this has got to be the best of any horror sequel. Freddy is still terrifying, but entertaining. Even you're entertained by what is really a monster. And that's how good Robert Englund is. He's playing a child murderer that you're entertained by, and that's not easy to do. So, number 2, the original and Nightmare on Elm Street. This movie would have been top slot for me had it not been that fucking sex doll pulled through a door ending. That studio interference on Wes Craven's masterpiece should never ever have happened. It ruined the end of the movie. The ending that we got was confusing, cheap. It didn't sit right with the rest of the film. The lid of the car should have come down and had the red and green stripes, and that been it. That would have been the perfect end there. The mother being pulled through the door was fucking so bizarre and so out of left field, but they wanted to build a franchise. So in a way the end worked because it did give us a franchise, but I wasn't a fan of it, that ending. But this movie spawned the legacy of Freddy Krueger. It was a visionary movie. It gave us Freddy Krueger, it gave us Nancy, it gave us that creepy nursery rhyme. More importantly, this movie was actually scary. It fucking terrified me. If you watch it now and look back, it doesn't look that scary. But in the 80s, this thing terrified people. I've got an auntie that couldn't sleep after this film, and even 10 years later, after she watched it, she still looked up to check the wall above her bed because of that scene where Freddy comes out of the wall. He doesn't jump out and go boo. He just slowly misshapes the wall and then goes back in, and it was terrifying. I genuinely watched this film far too young, and it scared me. Later, going back and rewatching it, it's still a good movie. Just like to say, my uncle's a dick. Thanks for making me watch this as a 5-year-old child, so I couldn't appreciate it until I was much older. Freddy's the ultimate villain. He attacks kids. He attacks them at the most vulnerable when they're asleep in their beds. There were very clever practical special effects in this movie that CGI in the remake couldn't do. There's some innovative set pieces, the blood funnel in Jesse's room, Tina being pulled up across the walls and ceiling. Just a really, really good looking film for something this old. And it looked that good, it terrified people. So the number 1 movie on this list is my favourite horror movie of any horror movie. But this was the scariest of any of them. The original Nightmare on Elm Street was scary. This movie attacked you cerebrally. Nancy's in the bath at one point, again vulnerable, just about to fall asleep in the bath, and you see that glove come out of the water while she's naked. I mean, they don't show her naked, but she's naked and vulnerable. They just don't hold back with Freddy in this movie. He's unkillable, and it's a shame that later entries into this franchise couldn't hold or build on what a monster Freddy Krueger was. The third one did a good job, but this original would have been perfection had it not been for that ending. And number one, it has to be the granddaddy of slasher, and it is Halloween, the original John Carpenter. This isn't just my favourite horror movie or my favourite movie on this list. It is one of my favourite movies of... This isn't just my favourite horror movie. I would say this is one of my favourite movies of any genre. While Michael Myers isn't quite as unnerving and scary as Freddy Krueger, he is creepy. John Carpenter and Deborah Hill had an unprecedented level of success with this movie. It's an indie flick. The movie had no budget. They created the ultimate bogeyman, the ultimate final girl with no money. The work that went into this movie is incredible. You imagine hand painting leaves orange because the budget won't allow you to shoot outside California in the summer. They created autumn in Iowa in California. If you look carefully in the background, you can still see palm trees in some of the shots. Basically, the cast would film and then help the crew pick up the leaves to move them to the next part of the set or the next area to be shot because they didn't have enough leaves. That's the effort they went to. And that shows how tight this budget was. I mean, they just had a William Shatner mask spray painted in white, dyed the hair to create a horror mask. The score for this movie is eerie and very, very suiting for this type of film. And this movie, you watch it the first time and you think it's more gory than it is. There is very little blood in this movie. There's hardly any blood in this movie. It was the more simple stuff that worked in this film. Just Michael Myers tilting his head was so creepy. Like he was admiring that he just sort of stuck this guy to a wall. Donald Pleasence, this is his career-defining moment. When he says lines such as "he is pure evil," that whole speech, in a less capable actor's hands, that could have been the cheesiest thing ever put to film. Donald Pleasence delivers it and makes it believable. It didn't come across as cheesy or silly at all, and sometimes less is certainly more. Nick Castle is perfect as the Shape, even though he wasn't the only person to play the Shape in this movie. In fact, even Deborah Hill played him in a few scenes. The movie tricks you into thinking you've seen things you haven't, and the stinger at the end is still terrifying now. This guy takes 6 bullets after killing a group of children or teenagers and gets up and walks away from it or disappears, depending on how you look at it. That ending makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. And Michael, there's things with the camera work that is far superior in this movie. Michael doesn't jump out at you and go boo. He slowly appears from the darkness and it's just little parts of his mask light up. And that was far scarier than a cheap jump scare, which the later films did fall into, but that was far scarier than a loud jump scare for me. That slow emergence was far superior in scaring me. There's a tension all the way through this movie, and it builds up to the point where you want Michael Myers to jump scare you because then it's done, and it doesn't really happen. There's also that glorious continuous shot at the beginning. There are breaks in there. The kid puts the mask on and stuff, but they're so cleverly hidden that you may miss it. This movie is often imitated and has never been bettered by anyone. So there you have it. There it is, my 31 on the 31st. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think of my rankings. I'm not expecting anyone to put their own ranking because this took ages to do, to be fair. If you do think you can do a better list, do please let me know. As I said, this was a Cody Leach idea originally. He's quite a big YouTuber, he's a massive YouTuber for the horror community. And I've watched his original 31 on 31 video, and I just, I don't want anyone to think this is my idea. It's not. Cody Leach did it first. I just think it's a cool idea that I wanted to do. I hope you can respect that this is just my opinion and not me telling you how these films are, cinematography ranking. That's not what I was here to do. This is my enjoyment of the movies. So I hope you enjoyed watching this as much as I enjoyed making it. This wasn't an easy video to make because it's so long. I think, yeah, looking at the timer, this video before editing is an hour and a half. And that's without all the research I did, without rewatching movies, because I'd forgotten a lot of them. So yeah, like, comment, share, subscribe, all the good YouTubey stuff. Hit the notification bell, and I will catch you again soon for another review or unboxing. It'll definitely be a shorter video than this. I've been the Bearded Geek. Goodbye.